So let's begin. If anybody has questions, comments, suggestions, whatever cases, the floor is totally open.
We were debating the point.
Yeah. Oh, Rebecca says can you hear me?
Yes. Someone else was talking, but it's okay. No problem.
I apologize.
It's me, Abby.
Hello.
We were having a fierce debate upon the location of liver 5 and spleen 7.
Okay.
I know I'm cheating by asking you.
I cannot guarantee that I can solve the fierce debate because different people have different ideas. But do you see this line?
Yes.
Now, if I actually, on some people, because I'm thin, but if you do this, if you pick the gastrocnemius muscle and move it along, you will always get a dip. And so liver 5 is on the bone, and I'm looking for, I slide up and looking for the hole. Spleen 7 is spleen 7 is behind it, and again, I'm looking for a dent. Now, just, I see you won the debate, John. Is that what you're trying to say? He's heard this before. It's not fair. If you come to this, if you go to the source of his.
I realize that.
Sorry?
I realize that.
I will say this. Okay, so hold on. In my opinion, liver 8 is on the bone. Wang Juyi takes it behind, almost like kidney channel, but he's obviously unusual. A lot of people take the spleen quite a bit behind the bone. In my opinion, spleen 7 is right off the bone, while liver 5 is right on the bone, and kidney 9 is at the base of the gastrocnemius. So you have kidney 9, spleen 7, wherever the dent is, which I don't have, and liver 5. Okay, so 5, 7, 9.
Okay, because I kind of felt like spleen being an earthy point, it's not so close to the bone, but more in in the muscly bit. So for me, it's slightly off the bone.
Okay.
And John was like, no, it's on the bone.
Okay.
But like behind it. But it seems so near the bone that for me, where I learned the point location, I was like, well, for me, it's earthy. It should be more in the muscle. That's how I learned it. So
if you look, no, these are fair points. I will say this. First of all, so to make you a little bit happier about this bone thing. First of all, it's not on the bone; it's off the bone, but it's just about touching the bone. Okay. Whereas liver 5, you can't say it's off the. I mean, you can say anything you want. I can't say it's off the bone. It's on the bone. It has no. It's liver 5 for me, for what I'm using it for, which is like endometriosis primarily, gout. Detox, skin, all of that is that hole in the bone, and the name of the point suggests, it's a wormhole.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Like something that eats up something, so it needs something to eat up, and that's why we do moxa on it, because it's like when you have not mosquitoes, but you have termites, you smoke that burrowing into the wood, you smoke them out. Now, the spleen, remember that spleen 7 for us, we say that spleen 7 is a point on the spleen channel, however, is related to the kidneys. Like it does ear infections, it does edema, it has a bunch of things that are related to the kidney. So Nagano apparently thought of spleen 7 as really a kidney-like point. Therefore, the kidney always homes to the bones, the pubic bone, the hyoid bone, the ankle bone. So in that way, if it makes you a little bit happier with the theory of the earth. Now, hold on. I will say this. But if you read the descriptions, it very clearly says that the spleen channel is behind the bone. Now, you can then argue, well, behind the bone can be, 50 yards away on another person. Okay, so it could be on their earth. The thing is, if they say behind the bone, they kind of suggest that they mean behind the bone, and especially consider the fact that 8 and above the ankle bone, the liver and the spleen cross. And there is no way you can avoid spleen 9, for example, being attached to a bone. It's at the, it's underneath the trochanter. So it's clearly related. So I think sometimes what happens, and I don't know like what schooling you had, but if, you know, I think possibly some of the schools in England are still very influenced by the Worsley ideas. You know, so therefore it makes it, you know, you want the spleen to be earth no matter what. It has to be earth. And it has to have that, you know, the whole connotation that comes with earth. And I think sometimes it's worth remembering, well, two things about that is that a channel can be an earth channel or a water channel itself, but it's going to have other qualities as well. You know, so everything sort of interconnects or inter-exchanges. You know, that's why, for example, you have 5 points that represents the 5 elements. But the other thing to remember is that, especially with earth, people disassociate the elements from the yin-yang. And the elements are a further expression of yin-yang. Does that make sense? So you look a little bit like you're trying to figure out what I'm saying. So I'll give you the little lecture on it. So it'll be a lot faster and easier. So
probably for other people as well, I think.
Okay, yeah, no, I'm you know me, you just wind me up and I talk. It's not a problem. It's not like a big deal. So you have yin and yang, or yin yang actually, because you don't have yin and yang. You have yin yang. You have an interaction of yin yang. Okay, always. Now, to further refine it, now if I'm a really superior doctor, you know, like one of those Sue in Chapter 1 kind of guys, you know, that I'm like, I am so superior from 5,000 years ago, I can do anything in, you know, 2 seconds. Everything should be yin-yang, okay? But clearly, most of us mortals cannot analyze everything according to yin-yang. That's why we need further differentiation. So we have, when yin and yang interact, okay, what happens, you have a very yin state, which is the winter or the kidney, okay? Everything sinks in. And from this very yin, the yang starts coming out, and that's wood. It's the pushing out. Okay? And so interestingly enough, wood should really have an earth quality to it also because it roots down and pushes out. So that's the yang from within the yin, right? We have these 4 categories. The yin from the yin, the yang from the yin, the yang of the yang, and the yin from the yang. Okay, these are 4. Okay, so we have the total contraction of the kidney into the expansion from that storage in wood, which is liver, which is why the liver stores the blood. The liver still has, and that's why the liver is such a weird element. The wood is such a weird element. We talk a lot about wood excess, for example, but wood excess always involves deficiency. There's always, in any formula, herbal formula, for example, you always see they're going to give peony and dangwei to nourish the blood, because if the liver, that's like a sponge, if it gets dry, if there's not enough blood, it gets dry, gets thorny, and that's when you get that liver, you know, the TCM idea of the liver. Then you have the full expansion of yang, okay, which is fire. And then you have the starting to contract the metal, like something consolidates against, you know, like the vapor consolidates, starts to shrink. That's the yin from within the yang. That's metal. And then we move back to water. Now, if you think about one's life, you know, yeah, I mean, you know, most of us do like to sleep or whatever, you know, fine. But life itself is about, as Elizabeth Rochard likes to say, it's about going out dancing kind of thing. It's about being young, okay? You don't live your life in order to just hibernate all the time. You need to hibernate, you need that, but the purpose of life is fire, which is why the heart is the emperor. Okay, it's not just that it stores the mind. The mind is about interaction. That's why there's a fire involved. Okay, so where is the transition going? Where is the hardest transition? Most people, you know, except this year. Okay, when spring comes, they're very happy. Even this year, When spring came at the beginning, it was all corona. But now that they're a little bit willing to let go a little bit of corona, when the days got nice and the shutdowns were relaxed a little, suddenly we're all going crazy. Okay, this is easy. Moving from winter to spring, moving from total yin to yang, from within towards more yang, easy. Moving from yang into the yin is a lot harder. Okay, so if you're having a good party, you're in a good rave and you're dancing your butt off, and suddenly it's curfew time. It's like, let's go to sleep. That's not so happy for most people. Most people go, wait a second, it's like, I think we can go to another party now, kind of thing. So that's why the earth element, if you're representing it as in a circle as opposed to in a center, which is really where it should be, then you're putting the earth element between fire and metal. And that's how you now get the circle. The problem is that then you have people who are taking this as if this is a separate theory, as if 5 elements is a little bit like the Indian elements or the Greek elements, as if first of all, they're not elements, they're processes. It's called wu xing. Xing is to walk. So 5 walkings, 5 movements of yin yang, and it's actually called yin yang wu xing. Okay, it's not a term that exists on its own, wu xing, as in some astrological thing. It's a term that's clearly meant to develop the yin yang theory, to give you a little extra capacity within yin yang, extra whatever subtlety. So so first of all, earth can be anything. It can be bone, it can be liquid, it can be, honestly, could be anything. And you can say, the spleen produces the blood. Well, it should be on blood vessels, in which case, I mean, I can go in many directions if I start taking it as an element that I start associating. The associations are not necessarily wrong, but those are not the elementary part of the description of earth. Earth is transition. If you want to define earth in one thing, now then you can say, yes, it's fleshy. Yes, it's, people with earth issues will have digestive issues, boundary issues, but, also you can have a lot of things to say about earth beyond that, but you have to first and foremost say, earth is about transformation, facilitating the movements. Okay? The so-called Indian summer, the period that allows you to move between season to season. So if you take that as your most essential component of the earth element, then the flesh is irrelevant. I'm not saying it is irrelevant, but then I don't have to be married to that. The other thing I will say, so the liver is responsible, the character is very clear, okay, Jin. Meaning it's the power of something that has power and is striated, elongated in the body. The spleen character of what what we translate as flesh is not so clear. Okay, and there are actually a number of different versions from what I understand of it. I'm not a Chinese scholar, so I can't give you the whole thing. It's like, it'd be very nice if I could, but I can't. But my understanding is that the spleen is a lot more nebulous, and it suggests that it's something between the skin and the actual muscle. So it might actually be more the connective tissue, the fascia. So because we want things that are more clear, so we've turned the liver into the tendons, but that's really not totally fair, for a number of reasons, because the power is actually in the muscle. So I'm not saying the muscle belongs to the liver, I'm saying the power of the muscle belongs to the liver. So I'm not sure that they were differentiating specific, they were wanting to so clearly say tendon versus muscle. I think they were trying to say, like, people like flesh, because it's as if it's not the muscle. But mostly we think of flesh as muscle, but I think flesh in some ways is much more correct. They're trying to say the actual volume of it, the mass of it, is the spleen, and the function, the power of it is the liver. That's what I think they're trying to say. And, you know, and then you can sort of, but I think the spleen, and also clinically speaking, I think the spleen does have a stronger connection to connective tissue rather than muscle, even though we do say spleen 3 is the point for muscle spasms, you know, muscle pain, you know, so that those two are not mutually exclusive. Okay. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it was just interesting how we were very different on our point location. And I was like, that's not it. Don't needle me there. You're out.
Well, so the other thing I would suggest is this. I think people can have a lot of ideas. So if Wang Chuyi said liver channels all the way in the back, that's his clinical experience speaking for the perspective that he's using. He's palpating and saying he was a TCM kind of guy. Okay, so he was looking for liver pathologies that he could diagnose in whatever other ways and saying what's happening in the channel here. And he said, oh, I'm feeling bumpies here. You know, and these bumpies must belong to the liver because this person is very, you know, they've had hepatitis or whatever it is. They are clearly liver in his ideology. So he's relating the liver channel to that. Now, I'm not aware that he ever used Liv5 to begin with. So that might be for palpation only and not necessarily for actual points. For me, when I'm looking at Liv5 for the purposes that I want, or for spleen 7 for the purposes that I want, I'm not going to say that there is no spleen 7 somewhere else. I am going to say that for most people, the spleen 7 that tends to work for edema, that tends to work for bleeding issues, that tends to work for ear issues, okay, that spleen 7 tends to be very close to the bone and tends to have a puffiness to it or an edema, or like when you press on it and you can see the finger still there after you finish pressing. Can there be another spleen 7 that's related to digestive because it's called the leaking valley? Oh, go, and goo can be digestion. So if you're wanting to look at it as a point for diarrhea, for example, or something along those lines, okay, perhaps that point is actually further back. And of course, it all going to depend on, you know, it's all about your ideas about where a point is to some extent. So if you say the point is here and I say it's there, if I try to use your location, it may not even work. But it works for you, and that's all that matters. So I think there could be multiple spleen 7s out there with multiple ideologies behind them, multiple theories behind them, multiple locations and multiple quote unquote functions, all depending on who's using it at when and for what purpose. There's no one point, you know, for any point, because it's all, you know, every person is going to be different to begin with, and every practitioner.
So you definitely believe then that intention and clarity in what you're doing is what helps then your treatment because that's how you're using it?
I believe that very strongly, and I also believe that there is an objectivity of actual tissue as well. I believe both things exist, and I think that one can override the other depending on your personality and your capacity as a practitioner, which is strongest within you. I am someone that, how shall I say it? I have a very strong affinity to body structures. Okay, that's my interest, and it's certainly my interest in technically speaking in teaching and stuff like that. I will tell you that clinically I can accomplish things that have nothing to do with it, with some people at least. So it's a mix, and I can tell you that even people who will poo-poo the whole intention and try and make it look like, you know, I mean, so for example, I remember people would say about Kiko, oh, she's such a shaman, you know, and I don't think, Kiko would take it to probably, I don't know what she will take it. She probably would at that time would have taken it as an insult, you know, because she wanted, you know, it was like, there's no objectivity here. That I know what I'm doing, and this is how it is, and was an importance to that. So it all it all depends. So I mean, even the people who can be extremely objective can become total space cadets if you put them in the right position. And the people who are totally into like, oh, this is very spiritual and energy and the aligning with the stars, suddenly they'll get very much into a body structure, and that's exactly where it should be. So I think there's a mix, and I think both totally work. So I think familiarizing oneself, the ability to, when one doesn't work, maybe the other will. And believe me, it happens to me in the treatment room. It happens all the time. It's like, fuck it. This is all bullshit. All the objective findings are not getting me anywhere. No, I'm not someone who invents, no, I mean, I'm not someone who invents points. There are people who just go, oh, but I feel like this point is really good for them, and you kind of go, but can you explain it? Can you tell me what it is that you're feeling? And it's hard for, I mean, they just feel something comes over them or whatever, and it's like they are called to this point or whatever. That's not, I don't do that. I'm called to a point because it has it suggests something to me, either by, listen, by name means nothing. Just because somebody called a point a name 2,000 years ago, what the fuck does that mean? Excuse my language. It's like, how do I know it's not their mistress was called that? It means, so it's just something that it gives me a clue to start searching for stuff. So yes, I invent usage of points from, well, you can call it intuition, intention, whatever, but I'm always trying to prove it physically on, that's why I happen to like palpating abdomen and neck, because if something changes in the neck and the abdomen, I know that I didn't just make this stuff up. It has some basis in reality. So I think even intention needs to eventually, because you're dealing with a patient, with a physical patient, it needs to somehow translate to something physical. Is that?
Yeah. No, I didn't mean like you would have an intention regardless of the point, but with your knowledge and how you want to direct it, that you do it in that way.
Yeah, preferably. I mean, I would like to not just needle mechanically most of the time. It would be nice if I mean, even if the intention, okay, so first of all, yeah, so intention is important and can be overemphasized, etc. But the first intention is, I am here. The moment I'm holding the needle, I'm here, and I move to the back of my heart. I open the area between my shoulder blades, lengthen my neck, and ground my feet. That's my first intention, is I'm here. So whatever gets transmitted, and I don't know what it is because I don't do Qigong, and I'm not, it's not my thing quite. But that's what that is my intention, is to totally be here, totally open up, so that my hand is transmitting something from my thoracic vertebrae. Now, I knew practitioners who said when they needle some point and they're thinking, evil out, evil out, evil out, kind of thing. I don't have the person. No. Well, no, they talk about it, right? Go and share, right? To reduce. Take those demons out, take those bacteria out, take whatever, COVID out, whatever. And they feel like by having this intention, by saying that to themselves or thinking that or whatever, it really helps. I don't have that experience. It's not, I mean, because to me, it's like, if I think, because I give you a little bit of an extreme example, evil out, but to me, it would feel like I'm playing some weird game, so it's just not it's not my training. It never was, so it doesn't fit my personality. So, but it fits other people's personality. Listen, I mean, I see practitioners doing things that large intestine 4, liver 3. Okay, it's something I wouldn't do. I mean, even if I knew it was the best thing for the patient, I can't bring myself to do it. It just doesn't fit my, I don't like doing it, but I can't argue that there are practitioners who do it and get incredible results, and they do it on maybe 95% of the patients, maybe extreme cases, granted, but, and they're extremely successful. There are people who see dozens of people a day. They don't have a lot of time to, like, analyze and blah, blah, blah. Oh, this work, it's like my mother once went to an acupuncturist. This is many decades ago. And, she had cancer. And so the practitioner puts in stomach 36, only point, and tells her, oh, this point very good for energy, for all body, blah, 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 blah. I mean, we all know that people do that. That's very standard. Now, was it bad for her? Was it, no. It wasn't very subtle necessarily. It wasn't very directed. I'm always interested in directing the treatment a little bit more. But it doesn't mean you can literally needle someone possibly anywhere. Put them on the table, put some music on, make them feel good, put any needle in. And there's a very good chance that they will feel better. I hate to make it sound like I'm Ted Kapchak saying it's all placebo. I'm not, what I'm saying is there is that effect of acupuncture regardless. Then my challenge for me personally is to make that space that you give a person, make it get directed towards the problem a little bit more efficiently than just give them space. Because at the end of the day, healing is about providing space and light.
Yeah.
Okay? So if that's the case, then you don't even need to direct. You just have to give enough space, enough light, and it will direct itself. But I'm a little more ambitious, so so I'm interested in the technicalities, but I also acknowledge that just technicalities.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Sorry. There's something on the chat here somewhere, so oh, you're welcome. You can speak. Hold on, let me make sure you're unmuted, Talia. Okay, you should be unmuted, so you can speak if you want.
Hey, Avi. Hi.
Hi. Hello.
I met you back in Greenland.
Sorry?
I said I met you in Greenland. Yeah, with Kelly and that whole crazy crew.
Yes. Hi. You look different.
My quarantine hair, but I just wanted to. I just want to pop in and say hello. And I saw you were doing this, and
thank you.
Love the explanation and the love and the light and space. I mean, right? Technically, we're supposed to heal all this ourselves, but we need some help a lot of times.
We do. Well, we do.
Yeah, that's all. Okay.
Thank you. Anyone else? You look like you have something brewing.
No, I was just waiting if nobody had anything. I just wanted to ask. It was one of the cases just before we stopped, and I kept seeing this guy who had skin problem. And
what kind of problem?
A skin problem, but in the evening, or it could be any time of the day, especially he was hot, it just comes out with this severe itchiness, and he just ends up, scratching and everything. And it just suddenly started a couple of years ago. But he's one of those people who did not have the, anything to tell me from the palpation, because I love palpation. So not only those typical places, but I just palpate, lot of the places, like, okay, is there any stiffness here and there? And there wasn't anything at all. But I just thought, because it's the skin, sudden things, maybe something to do with toxins. So I just did a detox things, large intestine, 15 and a kidney 9 and things like that. But the one point I have found when I was palpating his back was around T7 to T9 area. If I was palpating on the right hand side, he just go jump like the fish out of the water sort of things. And I said, oh, is it painful? Sorry. And then he said, I don't know what. But he's one of those people. I think he had other sensation, but he was probably very controlling. So his body wasn't telling his body what he was, because basically absolutely nothing. I thought, it's not possible that he has got something. I just keep going on. But apart from these places, he didn't have anything. So I wasn't really, well, I did the detox and then liver point, but then I just thought of what I could have done more to search what's going on, and in terms of the treatment, what I could have added on top of, you know, treating the liver and the detox. And
So here's so there's kind of two questions here as I see it. One is, what do you do when there's not enough findings? And sometimes you just have to let go. You just have to say, I'm not finding it. Now, what you are finding, it's not atypical for people to have liver, but that does not show on the front, but only shows on the back. So what I do, that now that I don't normally palpate the back, from the front, when they're face up, but next time they come, I already know. So I'm going to check everything against that right side UV1718, and, and see what I need to do. So now you have to say to yourself, okay, so you have a number. You don't have the official excess liver deficiency because you don't have the under the ribs ouch or dull pain. By the way, you can try and pinch and see if the left side and the right side are different. So that could be something you could try. The other thing is, so now that you're on liver, see if on the right side outside do 20, on the right side there's a big dent, maybe even pain. So you just keep inventing options. Maybe C3, C4 on the right side might be painful or a little weird. Sometimes you have to educate people as to some of the subtleties. Sometimes that doesn't help at all. Now, itchy often goes with either liver 1 or liver 5. Okay, so
liver 5, sorry.
Yes, yeah, liver 5 is a good skin problem, especially if it's more dry. Can go with liver 5, but especially if it's like inflamed or oozy or red. Liver 1 is more for itchy and also dry, but liver 5 is more if it starts getting into like the more oozing kind of situation. So his symptom is officially in the liver category. Now the other thing you can do, so you keep looking and you keep verifying your points against the one finding that you have. And even though you clear it with a point, you keep testing all your other points. So don't needle anything, don't moxa anything until you've checked all your points, so that you have a way to actually substantiate, to physically create the understanding, yes, this point is useful, all these points are useful, or they're not. The other thing is, now let's say there's no finding at all. Then you work with theory and you just pile up the theory. In other words, okay, detox and skin are basically the same treatment, but so I want detox skin, I want liver. And then you go to the medical history. What has happened to you in your life outside of, so I understand that a few years ago he started getting itchy and he can't say that something prompted it. But what did he have when he was 10 years old, 15 years old, 30 years old, whatever? I mean, it's just worth investigating and then treat whatever, even though you're not finding anything on the body, treat theoretically the medical history to the best of your knowledge. Sometimes you have to do it. Sometimes the pulse will tell you something useful. So now, skin and autonomic nervous system can be related. So sometimes that person will have the what I call an autonomic nervous system pulse, where it feels tight, it feels stringy, but when you press on the pulse a little deeper, it either widens or the pulse disappears altogether. In other words, that it's not a strong pulse. Wiry is supposed to be strong in excess. It has a sort of, it has a stringiness to it, absolutely. But it doesn't, but when you press on it, it either loses that stringiness or the pulse disappears altogether. Those are people who often have blood pressure issues. Okay? So then under the third toe, etc. So you just keep searching, and sometimes, listen, I can't find anything. I don't know what the hell I'm doing, and stick some needles in. In my case, it's not going to be large intestine 4, liver 3, but it will be the equivalent of large intestine liver 3. According to, okay, you have skin problems. Okay, detox and liver 5 or liver 1, whatever I think might be appropriate, and whatever. I mean, you may even go for adrenal. Prednisone, corticosteroids are used for itchiness. So you just keep expanding the vocabulary and the analogies, with a hope that maybe something hits. But there's always a percentage of people that you can't treat. No one can treat everyone, except some mythological people in Suen chapter 1. But the real practitioners, no matter how good we are, we're always going to meet a challenge. That's going to say, you don't know jack shit about me. You can't figure this puzzle out. Okay, and 3 years later you go, wow, I wonder, I could have done. It's the nature of what happens. So you just accept it. Now, when he itches, does he break the skin?
Well, just because he touches it and scratch it to death. So, but otherwise, when I saw him, because it's just sort of towards the evening, that's before he gets itchy, and it didn't look too bad. It did look like he must have had a rash maybe the day before, and it was a little bit pink, and he moisturizes himself like mad. So it does look like it did have something, but then I couldn't really see. And anything was that when he was a young boy, he had an eczema, but not where he was experiencing. So he was experiencing on his head, neck, and back. So like Taiyan sort of area.
So he's had eczema as a child, or as a teenager or a child?
No, he wasn't having eczema on his head, but where he was experiencing recently, it was a Taiyan area. He was on the joint when he was child, young.
Okay, and anything else in his medical history?
No, because that's another thing, is he kept insisting he's healthy, nothing happened up until recently, and he was coming up to the retirement. And 3 years ago, that's what he can recall, that there was a huge episode of some stress things. I thought, oh, okay, it might be it. But then I didn't really dig into it myself, but then he said something. I thought, oh, is that it? Is that your huge stress? I don't know. I mean, it was such tiny things, like he couldn't find a car key or something, and that just brought it all up. So I just thought, oh, that's a very strange incident to, you called it as a, huge stressful incident. And so I thought, well, okay, I did ANS because I thought, right, okay, there's something is up there and then not kind of connecting up and, on the bottom, and the detox. And so I just thought, right, okay, what else? Because it was the difficulty was I could get to that T7, 8, and 9 area on the right hand side when he was relaxing and lying down on the front,
right?
But not when he was on the supine position. I couldn't really get to that point to trigger that reaction, because I wanted to press, for example, say liver 1. Liver 1 wasn't difficult to check. But so I just felt, just because that was the only place, I couldn't really sort of test it against with lots of places. I thought, oh, it might be good, or not really.
Yeah, so yeah, I would say, you do really do what you can. And the only other thing the reason I was asking like how oozy it is, we do have bladder 63, for boils. So that's one more option to kind of consider in the skin issues. But it doesn't sound like he has boils.
No,
so
he wasn't.
It's definitely, the bladder 63 is like the damp heat poisoned kind of situation. So that's why, I was thinking, try and get more. If he had eczema as a child, there's a possibility he may, or if it was as a child, there's a possibility he's had asthma as a child also. So you can look at lungs and you can look at immune. The other thing is, you said that now he has it on the back, but also you said at the joints. There is always the possibility of some autoimmune. So then adding REN4. So what I do is I take all these possibilities and I try and thread them and see what's common. So basically, if I was looking at possibility of asthma, So I'm looking at lung, and I'm looking at kidney anyway for adrenal, and I'm looking at kidney 9 anyway for detox. And then so basically all I'm doing is adding REN4. Sort of, I mean, you just see what I'm saying, and immune points. So I think that there's a way to kind of like cast a larger net on the so-called diagnosis, even though I don't have a clear diagnosis because I can't confirm it.
Yeah.
So I'm just kind of like catch all the different possibilities in whatever manner I can. You know, within reason, obviously.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep. Thank you.
All right. Anyone else?
I was actually going to ask you, Avi, about boils now that you've just mentioned it.
Yes.
Bladder 63, right?
Mhm.
Anything else you might consider?
Boils?
Yeah.
Well, you know, there could be you have to look at that. There's bladder 63 is like the so-called damp heat toxin point for me, but so that's like for explosive diarrhea, for example, and it's for boils on the skin. So that's more like the symptom, but then you have to say what else is happening for that person. So, do you want to treat skin in general, as in kidney 9, large intestine 15? Do you want to treat liver? It's an inflammatory condition. So, do you want to go for liver 5? So kind of look at different options around it. But no, I don't have another like Z-boil point.
Okay.
So,
Thank you.
Camille, did you have something you wanted to share?
No, I'm sorry. I'm just having trouble with my audio, so
no problem.
I'm trying to work with it. That's why I left the meeting briefly, so I apologize.
Sorry. No problem.
I may have to leave again because I can barely hear you. I don't know what changed.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Bummer.
Anyway, it's not you. I think it's me, so I'll take care of it. Sorry.
No problem. All right. Anyone else?
I'm just curious about your non-use of Li4 and liver 3. What's up with that?
Dogma. It's basically, when I went to school, and granted that was a long time ago. Hold on one second. Hold on. It's okay. It's okay. I just muted you so that, you unmute yourself when you want to talk. So basically when I went to school, and that was like, 30 years ago, pretty much every patient got stomach 36, possibly spleen 6, and large intestine 4, liver 3. Those were like the big thing, and either do 20 or YinYang or something like that. And it was kind of like, there are these workhorses, and quite honestly, my experience in school was that school clinic was basically useless. Nothing ever happened there in terms of patients moving. It was the same patients again and again. They never got better. Somebody had knee pain. I remember one specific patient. They came for knee pain, so they needled inner knee eye, outer knee eye towards each other. And this poor guy came on for like 6 months. I'm like, what the hell's going on here? It's like they're not getting better. Something needs to move. So I have a real aversion to some of those workhorses.
Okay.
So
the
it's
formulaic.
just that I've rebuilt. Yeah, well, it's also that it's, like I said, I'm interested in trying to refine and be more technical and be able to direct things. So it quote unquote annoys me. So I've just come to a point where it's very difficult for me. Now, I have needle liver 3 on its own, on a rare occasion, granted, but it is a good point for if people have mouth sores, for example. I do use 3 with spleen 3. I have very rarely used large intestine 4. In fact, I can't think of a point in time that I've actually needed a large intestine 4. I have checked large intestine 4 by, let me just see. I just need to see if you can see what I'm doing. Yeah. So I will do this on large intestine 4 for people who have strokes and stuff, because the more flaccid it is, the more likely it is that the brain is flacciding out also. But as a point for treatment, I know it's a really important point, et cetera, and if God forbid Richard Tan will kill me, it's like a point that I just never use, and it's like the point for for the balanced method people. It's like you start there and then you do whatever holograms you do. It's just not anything that's a workhorse is something that by my nature I will immediately put down and avoid because I'm a rebel and I like to I like to play and I like to think. I like
Right, you
solving
like
puzzles.
figure things out.
Yeah. So it's, that, but I know very good practitioners, and it slightly pains me to say that, who basically you come in, they do large intestine 4, liver 3, and the patients feel great. And I'm like, wow, how does that happen? It happens. And it's okay that it happens. It just doesn't happen. I will also say, this is not to be disrespectful, because I studied with Miriam Lee. So I knew, I didn't know all of this stuff, but I knew a fair amount of this when I first started. And, I used to go to a clinic and blah, blah, blah. And I have to say that I would talk to friends of mine who do, either balance method or tongue or whatever. And they would say, oh, use blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, oh, okay, I'm going to try it. I'm stuck with this patient. I was like, this is the best time to try those methods. And I do it and nothing happens. It does nothing. I mean, well, no. Actually, my experience is not that it does nothing. It does something when the patient's on the table and then they get off the table and nothing happens. It's totally reversed afterwards. So I've realized that it's not a method that works with my personality. Now, if you asked Miriam would have said, because people would sometimes say, you say this point, return to nest is so good for blah, blah. This point is so good for blah, blah. I tried it. And Miriam would say, oh, your needles are too thin. You don't needle deep enough. She literally said that to people. I mean, Miriam never saw a needle that was less than 2 inches long. And they were thick and they were rusty. This was the time when we were autoclaving still. So it's a different, so I can understand that, if for certain kinds of methods you need, and both the tongue and the balance method people talk a lot about needle at the level of the disease. In other words, needle towards the bone, needle towards the, needle at the skin level, needle at the, I don't do any of that. I'm just breaking down a little bit of connective tissue and things move on. So that's why for me, large intestine 4, liver 3, it's totally, it's about the dogma. It has nothing to do with whether it's good or not. It's about me. Sorry.
Okay. Just interesting. It was just an interesting, because, that's one of the, taking the Japanese acupuncture course. You're talking about all the abdomen, for this abdomen, you do this, and it's, I mean, you're taught formula, and then you have to figure out how to go beyond it.
Of course. So I will tell you a funny story that Camille may or may not remember. I think she's still with us. So this is over 20.
Yes, and I was just thinking of this story.
the famous large intestine liver 3 story. So I'm teaching in Santa Cruz.
I'm interested. It tickles me that you remember.
Of course, I've talked about that more than once, and it would be interesting to see if we remember the same story. But if we have the same version.
Please.
But
Please.
I was, this is more than 20 years ago, because this was still when Oketsu was the big kahuna. So, and I'm, liver 4, lung 5 on the left side, resolves Oketsu, blah, blah, blah. Of course, I haven't done that in maybe 20 years also. And Camille says, and Camille is someone I've known for many years, and I know she's a good practitioner. And, so it wasn't like, someone says, and I fuck you, whatever, it's like, I'm taking it seriously. So she says, I can solve Oketsu with large intestine 4, liver 3. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I can't believe this is like absolutely outrageous. That's like, how could you possibly bring this up? It would be like, So I said, my recollection was, I'm kind of like pretending that I'm like not overly shocked. And I'm like, no, you have to be magnanimous, and not think that your way is the only way. So I said, let's experiment. So I can't remember exactly what was happening. I think somebody was on the table. They had Oketsu, but if I recall, they also had Ren 17 and maybe some other things. And I said, let's let's look, let's see. Of course, with a little challenge, granted, it wasn't quite as magnanimous as this. 20 years later, it's a lot easier to say, oh yeah, let's see, I'm very open. I was not that open, but so.
And I was a scared little practitioner of like 6 months.
Yes, but well, I don't, yeah, whatever.
Anyway, go ahead.
Yeah, but she had a reputation of being a good practitioner. I don't know how after 6 months, but this is what I knew. But anyway, so Camille does large intestine 4, liver 3, and lo and behold, Oketsu is gone, and I'm like, fuck, unfucking believable. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. It's like, how could this is horrendous. And then I'm like, oh, what happened to Rent 17? What happened to blah, blah? And to my great relief, like if it matters, it didn't release the other things. Okay, so then I'm going, okay, let's take this out. Now let's do liver 4, lung 5. And this did happen to release Ren 17 and whatever else there was. So my conclusion was that, yes, you can release any point. And by the way, people who've taken classes with me have seen me do this. I will take a person just to show you that releasing the abdomen is bullshit. It doesn't mean anything. Okay, don't rely on it too much. I take their knees, they're lying face up. I take the knees, bring them to the chest, and just weigh on it, on their knees. So it stretches the fascia of the abdomen. Then I take the legs out. I do this for like 15 seconds, 20 seconds, maybe not even that. And I recheck the abdomen. You can't find anything in the abdomen after that. Getting rid of the abdominal finding is not your purpose. And it's not that relevant. It's simply a way to measure what you're doing. That's all. Does that make sense? So, we get married to all these ideas. So often, I tell people often, what you have a point in mind that you think is supposed to do something. Check it. Make sure abdomen, neck, whatever, pulse, whatever, it changes. Don't needle it yet. Move on to the next thing you want to use. Check all your points first. Check your ideas first. Then implement them. Because the moment you started implementing, you don't know how much each point is doing if another point is interfering. So you want to do Oketsu, fine. Check whichever Oketsu version you do, doesn't matter. You do it, and just because left stomach 26, 27 disappeared, doesn't mean that was a good combination for the person. Doesn't mean that Oketsu was primary. Because if you press under the third toe, and Oketsu disappears, and Ren 17 disappears, and blah, blah disappears, and everything disappears under the third toe, it tells you Oketsu is secondary to the autonomic nervous system or the blood pressure issue. So you need to prioritize. Don't clear one thing. It's not useful. Well, it's useful to some extent, but it's not as useful as refining the combination that clears out the most. So Camille was a very good teacher. She may have been 6 months and I was maybe 4 years, if that, but she was a great teacher for me. It taught me a huge amount, seeing that you can clear the abdomen in different ways, not just according to the dogma. Anyone else?
And yes, that was the same story, because I never would have dared to have asked you about 4 gates ever again.
The gates have been closed. So, all right, anyone else before we end? Looked like someone had something, but no. All right, so I'm not sure how, yeah, please.
In Israel, we don't have mahwang. You talk about asthma before.
Yes, we don't have mahwang either. So I believe there's, is it Rushang? There is another, if you look at Bensky, I think it's Rushang or something like that, that very clearly says it's a substitute for mahwang. And I will tell you, my herb teacher, with Dr. Jiang, not in school. Oh, she lived in Los Angeles. I lived in San Francisco at the time. And Dr. Jiang always said, Mawang not used in California. No use in California. Too hot here. So now, of course, she lived in LA. San Francisco is quite a bit cooler, but Israel is a little bit more similar to Los Angeles,
Yes.
from my recollection. So yes, Mawang is a very, you can say it's a very good herb, but unfortunately, it is quote unquote illegal for whatever reasons, and I can't get into it. But you do have it. I'm pretty sure it's called Ruxiang. The herb that's a substitute, that's considered the best substitute for Mawang. Does it do everything in the same way? And now there's this research about that Mawang actually has clear anti-inflammatory responses in the lung itself that that address COVID. Fine, fair enough. But you don't have. It's like there's only one herb in the world. I mean, it's upset. And I also understand that some people say that well, there's American Mawang, by the way. So I'm sure, because it's a deserty-ish kind of yellow, thorny thing, thing. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some version of it in Israel that might do similar.
Thank you.
But yeah,
Are you sure
officially.
about Rushang? Because I can't even imagine how that's, like, what aspect of Rushang?
Okay, maybe I have the wrong name. So give me 1 second. I'll check Bensky. Hold on.
Sorry. Oh.
You.
I did say it's the last herb in the clear wind cold category.
But Rushang is in the
yes,
Great Flood.
yeah, I know. I'm figuring
Okay.
that. I mean, it's something Xiang. Hold on. Where are you, darling? Oh, not Rushang, Xiangru. I just had the opinion reversed.
Oh, Shangru. Okay.
Sorry,
Thank you.
Okay. My bullshit. So yeah.
Okay, thank you.
This is considered in here. I'll tell you exactly. So now that I have releases the exterior expel summer heat and transfer summer heat, very important for COVID, right? Promotes urination, reduces swelling. By the way, same functions as Mawang. And let's see, it says something. It's supposed to be a milder Mawang. No, unfortunately, I don't see it here. Maybe in the summary they'll have it, but I do remember when I learned it in school, that was like, it was the substitute. I just saw someone in one of those seminars that they have now. They were talking, people asked the exact same thing, and they said you can use Shangru instead. Now, Shangru is not all that popular, but maybe will get to be popular. Oh, here. Shangru is so effective against summertime colds with injury from dampness that it is sometimes called the summertime herb Ephedra, Mawang. Okay, so that's what Bensky said, that it's considered the summertime. I'm sorry? So anyway, so yeah, it is traditionally used as a substitute for Mawang, apparently especially in summer, because it's good for summer heat. And we know that the original reports from Wuhan were, this is a summer heat kind of, that's why they were using Peilan a lot in the formulas. I don't know if we in the West, and I think every country is going to have its own understanding of the disease, but we are not seeing it so much necessarily as summer heat, but it might be just because we as practitioners are not seeing it so much because most of us are not even working yet. So what we can't see, we can't evaluate. So.
There has been a fair amount of reports of nausea and vomiting, and it looks like Huoshang, Peilan, Huoshang Shengshitang as a formula seems to line up pretty well.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, that in the West, we're talking a lot more about digestive issues as well in COVID, whereas in China, originally, they were talking about it as a lung. So either we're seeing a slightly different disease, we have different bodies, or we're catching it at different stages or something. It's very hard to know, but I don't know. So. All right, anyone else before we end? All right, well, enjoy your week. So don't open too much. Don't go out and go crazy if you are opening. Be careful. Be, you know, keep the yin a little bit in this crazy time. So,
thank you
I
so
like
much,
this
Avi.
retreat. Thank you very much. Thank
enjoy.
you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
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 Bye.